I remember back to 2016 when the Washington Post released 16 negative articles in 16 hours on Bernie Sanders. I mean, that was almost unprecedented. And still to this day, the Washington Post is pretty much anti-Bernie. Like, they don't like Bernie at all. They just can't stand the guy. They just see Bernie as like this thorn in the side of the establishment, which is great. But the Washington Post is the establishment. They are embedded deep within the establishment, the confines of the establishment and the confines of the deep state, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, like anything that you want to see. So anytime you want to see the narrative of what is going on within typical politicians, typical corporatist type politicians, you go to the Washington Post. That is where you get your main your daily fix of bullshit coming from those kind of sneaky assholes that you and me can't stand. Progressives can't stand. And they wrote those articles, and man, it was unprecedented. I mean, it was crazy that they were writing that many articles in a 16-hour period, and it was just a bunch of bullshit. It was like, I'll look it up right now and I'll show you guys. It was hilarious. I think the FAIR, which is Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, which is a very good website, run by a bunch of kind of lefty progressives. It was founded by a lefty progressive, or at least a couple of them, and it was very interesting how they covered that. Let me just look it up real quick. One second. Yeah, here it is. Fair.org. Fair.org. Check this out. So look at these headlines. These are hilarious. Just in case you guys haven't heard this before. Hold on one second. So look, get ready for this. What Bernie Sanders still doesn't get about arguing with Hillary Clinton. Okay, it's gonna get worse. The Daily 202, 5 reasons Bernie Sanders lost last night's Democratic debate. Okay, fine. Bernie Sanders' 2 big lies about the global economy. Mental health patients to Bernie Sanders don't compare us to the GOP candidates? Mental health? Why would Bernie Sanders be comparing mental health patients to the GOP candidate? What the hell does that even mean? Because he says they're crazy? Okay. Clinton is running for president. Sanders is doing something else. Okay. An awkward reality for Bernie Sanders. A strategy focused on wider states. Okay, so let me just pause for a second. When Bernie Sanders was running in 2016, he was going to a lot of this. He was going to a lot of states. He wasn't just going to. What was he supposed to do? Just go to like California, go to like Texas, go to all the diverse states? No, he was going to a lot of the areas in the Rust Belt which were neglected by Hillary Clinton, but which were a lot of times had people's, a lot of those states had people suffering. People, states in the Rust Belt, states like Ohio, Iowa, I don't know, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin. I mean, I guess could be considered wider states. But he was campaigning in all these different states because he knew that he had to reach these kind of voters. But that doesn't mean he's in favor. What is that? Focusing on wider states. He's focusing on the states that you have to get. Why would he be? Well, he would have to be stupid to not go to those states. Now, Hillary Clinton famously, and progressives like myself, we're going to point this out repeatedly. Hillary Clinton did not, in the general election, I don't know about the primary, but the general election, she did not campaign in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and that's why she lost. That's why she lost to Trump, because those were the states that she did not campaign in, and she lost. Now, I don't know if a Democrat is going to make that mistake again, but if they were, they're going to lose. If they were to do that again, they're definitely going to lose again. Bernie Sanders is not doing that, and he's not doing that with any of those other states I mentioned either. So he's going to have to go there. He's going to go to Texas. He's going to have to go to all the southern states too. He's going to have to go to Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, all these different states, and he's doing that currently. So he's going to have to go to Virginia. He's going to go to West Virginia, go talk to coal miners, all that stuff. When Hillary Clinton went to coal miners, she was sitting at a table with coal miners. She said, "We're going to get rid of the coal industry. We're going to wipe out the coal industry." Now that's good if you want to say yes, we don't want to invest in coal anymore, but you don't put it like that. See, that's the problem with people like Hillary Clinton. Same thing with Joe Biden. I guarantee you, as Daniel just mentioned on the feed here, he says anytime Joe Biden opens his mouth, his poll numbers go down. That's the same exact thing with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is no different than Joe Biden. Her and Joe Biden are best friends, by the way. They're BFFs, and they have that same tendency of saying stupid things and then getting, I guess, pretty much getting lambasted by the people that are like, wait, that's fucked up. Why are you saying that? And people, they get called out and the poll numbers go down. That's exactly what happened to Hillary Clinton. And as people who were listening to Hillary Clinton say stupid shit, and then they listen to somebody like Bernie, like, wow, Bernie, this Bernie guy's Jewish socialist dude over here, this old Jewish socialist dude is making a hell of a lot of sense, and he's fighting for me. He's not going out there and saying some stuff that's offending me or going against my, kind of my values or my beliefs. Now he can say I disagree. Bernie can go out there and say, he disagrees with what certain things that I believe, like, certain principles I have or certain ideals that I follow, but he's still trying to fight for me. So Bernie trying to get health care for people, but it's not like Bernie is discriminating and saying, no, I'm only going to get health care for people in, coastal states like California and New York. No, he wants to get health care for everybody. He wants to get free education for everybody. He wants to get, a higher minimum wage or just living wage for everybody. So that's bullshit. But these talking points are typical. Anyway, so I went off into a tangent there a little bit, but let's continue here. It says the next headline from this Washington Post, these Washington Post headlines says, and the most partisan senator of 2015 is Bernie Sanders. Ooh, that's horrible. Can't have anybody partisan. The next one is, excuse me, I'm talking. Bernie Sanders shuts down Hillary Clinton repeatedly. So, again, that's another thing. I'll just say quickly. What happened in the debates was Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders in 2016 were arguing. They were doing their debates, and then he was saying, I'm talking, and she's interrupting him. And she said, and he's like, excuse me. And then everybody flipped out, and he's like, oh, he's such a sexist, and he's such a misogynist, and he's talking down to this woman. So when the woman talks, you shouldn't say anything. I'm sorry, when the woman is interrupting, you should just sit there and just let her interrupt you, apparently. Okay. Yeah, let's see how that works when it's a Republican woman. So if a Republican woman is in a debate and if she's saying some crazy shit that doesn't make any sense or lying, what are you going to say? That is somebody not supposed to yell down Sarah Palin when she's saying some bullshit? No, you're supposed to call her out and not let her talk fucking nonsense, basically. So the next one is, excuse me, Bernie Sanders doesn't know how to talk about black people. I think that's Jonathan Capehart. Yeah, that guy's a fucking hack. That guy was such a hack in 2016. I couldn't stand that guy. I think he blocked me on my old Twitter account too. He didn't block me this time though, because I had to get a new Twitter account after that one was suspended. And then let's see, what's the next one? This is huge. Trump, Sanders, both using same catchphrase. Oh my God, that's crazy. So Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, they have never used the same phrase as another Republican. So how many? So I guess when Joe Biden goes and teams up with a Republican for a certain kind of piece of legislation or a certain bill, apparently he's never used the same kind of catchphrases as that person who he agrees with, who he's doing a piece of legislation with. But when Bernie Sanders does it, you have to write a whole headline about it and point out how he sounds just like Trump. So apparently, I think what they're referring to, I can't read the article here, it's just a headline, but what they're referring to is Bernie Sanders, would say like a lot of things where, about the anti-establishment, I'm anti-establishment, I'm not pro-establishment, I'm, I don't know, I think he may have said something about the deep state and something, and stuff like that, and Trump caught on to that. Trump is not an idiot. He got onto that, and he started using the same phrases as Bernie. It's not like Bernie is trying to copy Trump. Trump is the one copying Bernie. So how's that Bernie's fault? I don't understand. But okay. more hackery from the Washington Post here. And so the next one says, here's something Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders have in common. We don't know what that is. I don't even really know what they're referring to. It was probably something decent that Ted Cruz said. But they probably, my guess is, I don't know. I can't see what they would, I don't really know what they would agree. I think they were agreeing on something back then. I don't remember. But I think recently they were agreeing on something about drones, I think. I don't know. Drone strikes, maybe? I don't know. But anyway. So yeah, Bernie Sanders. Yeah, so apparently Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz are the same now. So it's not only is Bernie Sanders the same as Trump, but he's also the same as Ted Cruz too. The next one is Bernie Sanders says white people don't know what it's like to live in the ghetto. Okay, about that. Okay, so that was one of the big controversies that had come on, and people are still bringing it up to this day. So Bernie Sanders was, I believe, he was doing a debate. You know what? Let's bring up the video here. I'll play it for you guys, and you can let me know what you think, and we can react to it at the same time here. Just a second here. Bernie Sanders living in ghetto. I think it was Florida. Was it a Florida debate? Here it is. Check this out. CNN. It's a CNN clip. Check it out. Play right now.
I was with some young people active in the Black Lives Matter movement. Young lady comes up to me and she says, "You don't understand what police do in certain black communities. You don't understand the degree to which we are terrorized." And I'm not just talking about the horrible shootings that we have seen, which have got to end, and we've got to hold police officers accountable. I'm just talking about everyday activities where police officers are bullying people. So to answer your question, I would say, and I think it's similar to what the secretary said, when you're white, you don't know what it's like to be living in a ghetto. You don't know what it's like to be poor. You don't know what it's like to be hassled when you walk down the street or you get dragged out of a car. And I believe that as a nation in the year 2016, we must be firm in making it clear. We will end institutional racism and reform a broken criminal justice system.
Oh my God, what a racist thing he just said. That is terrible. So apparently, as usual, the hacks at the Washington Post decided to take a quote out of context, decided to act like Bernie Sanders is, I don't know, hating on white people. I don't know what it is. Apparently, first he can't hate on black people enough, and then he can't hate on white people enough. So apparently he's not making anybody happy. But according to the Washington Post, again, I don't know what the article is. I think I'm behind a paywall when it comes to the Washington Post right now because I've seen so many of the articles. But so Bernie Sanders, again, it says Bernie Sanders says white people don't know what it's like to live in a ghetto. I don't know. They probably refer to him. I don't know. They probably refer to him not knowing what black people are going through. I don't know. But he's explaining it right there. He's saying somebody approached him and told him this. So I don't understand. Again, I don't get these article headlines. Of course, when it comes to that, when it comes to as somebody that's a journalism major, I was a journalism major at San Francisco State University. I studied journalism there for 4 years. And I always knew, I think back then I probably did it more, but back then I always looked at the headlines. I never looked at the articles that I was reading. I was like, oh, okay, so whatever it says on the headline there, it must be true. No, you always have to look past the headline. And any idiot knows this. Any idiot knows that. And back then, I guess I was an idiot then. So I knew, but back then I didn't know to do that. Nowadays, I'm just like, you can't trust the headlines. So this is a test case for not trusting what comes out of a headline in an establishment, and out of an establishment outlet such as the Washington Post. So somebody is saying, no, what black people reacted to was living in the ghetto part of, I guess, what Bernie Sanders was saying. 1 second. Okay, well, that's fine, but at the same time, the Bernie Sanders is not lecturing black people on. He is not lecturing people. You're saying it's not a positive or aspirational image. Okay, but Bernie Sanders is not lecturing black people on how they are living their lives. He is trying to explain to other people, because Bernie Sanders is from Brooklyn. He is from Brooklyn. He is from that community that has a lot of black people living there. So he knows what it's like for those people to live in that lifestyle. Now, he's not black. He never said he was black. He never said he's gone through institutional racism. He is Jewish, but he hasn't gone through institutional racism. Maybe he's dealt with anti-Semitism. I don't know. But that's a topic for another day. But the point is that when Bernie Sanders is saying that, he is not lecturing black people on how they are living their lives. He is lecturing people that do not know that black people are living like that. That's how they're living their lives. Now, if people want to spin that into a negative, then okay, well then you're just reaching. As Daniel just said on the feed here, they are reaching super hard. They were doing it then, and they're still doing it now. And they're still saying that Bernie Bros exist. They're still saying that people, people that like Bernie are racist because they don't understand how black people. There's tons of black people that support Bernie Sanders. He's going to rallies, and there's black people there, and that are saying that he's in support of. What they want. Nina Turner is one of his biggest advocates. Killer Mike is a rapper that's black. He lives in, I forgot what state. I think it's Georgia. I think it is. Yeah, he's Atlanta. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. He's one of his biggest advocates. Cornel West is one of his biggest advocates. So don't tell me that Bernie Sanders doesn't know that black people live these kind of lives. Don't tell me that Bernie Sanders is trying to talk down to black people. When has Bernie Sanders ever talked down to black people? A lot of the times, the only time they really ever can point to a time that Bernie Sanders has, at least as far as I can remember, I'll remember other things, but the main time that I remember Bernie Sanders being lambasted for talking down to people of color, or just like not even, well, in this case, not people of color, but people that that don't like him, basically, that already can't stand him, is when he was saying, identity politics is a bad thing. We should get away from identity politics and focus on policies. Now, that's something I support. I don't support obsessing over identity politics all the time. There's people out there who says, no, we have to vote for a woman because, or a black woman or a white woman or whatever. I have to vote for a woman because we need our first woman president. Well, if you're going to use that logic, then you better vote for Sarah Palin. You better vote for Carly Fiorina, who ran in 2016. You better vote for any woman that's running out there. You better vote for Marco Rubio because he's a Cuban. He's a Cuban. I think he was born in America, but he's Cuban. Ted Cruz is Canadian, and I believe his father was Cuban. He's Canadian. So are we going to vote for the first Canadian president too now? I mean, come on, man. It doesn't make any goddamn sense when these people use these attacks against, use these kind of racially identity, whatever identity is, racial, whether it's based on race, whether it's based on gender, whatever it is, because that's a house of cards. You can't use that strategy in any kind of election. You can't use that strategy in any kind of debate. You're going to end up falling flat on your face. So when Bernie Sanders is saying that white people don't know how to live in the ghetto, he is saying exactly what black people are saying. So apparently, I guess he's not allowed to say it, and only black people are allowed to say it. So if that's your objection, then why do you call Bernie Sanders racist then? So what is he supposed to say? Is he supposed to sit there and say that black people have it easy? No, he's saying what the reality is. Now, if you don't want him to say that, then I don't know. Then I don't know what to tell you. Then apparently he can't do anything right that's going to make you happy, obviously. So again, we went off into a tangent there, but let's move on to the next headline from these Washington Post articles. It says, why Obama says bank reform is a success, but Bernie Sanders says it's a failure. Okay, I can quickly answer that. Obama didn't do any kind of bank reform when he did Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank was a ridiculously a watered down piece of legislation. It did almost nothing to prevent any of the problems we're currently having or were having back then. I think it was in 2012, I believe, or 2010. Yeah. So yeah, and he didn't reinstate Glass-Steagall, which would have separated consumer banking and investment banking. So I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about that, but a lot of Obama's legislation has been shitty. And for Bernie Sanders to say it's a failure is perfectly normal. So actually, that headline is not that bad, because I would like to see I would have liked to have seen what the context of that, the further context of that article is. But so I can't really comment. But I mean, as far as the headline goes, he's right. So there's nothing else to say about that. So the next headline is Bernie Sanders pledges the U.S. won't be number one in incarceration. He'll need to release lots of criminals. Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, recently Bernie came out he came out and said that people that are in jail should be allowed to vote. Now, when I first heard that, I did not support it. I thought that was a little bit curious, because I don't know if I believe in letting people who commit mass murders to be voting in favor of possibly shitty candidates like Donald Trump. But at the same time, I believe in freedom, and I believe that you should have as many rights as possible to do what you want to make this better, to make this world into what you feel you can make it into. Now, obviously, 1 vote, 2 votes, 3 votes is not going to swing a fucking election. Obviously, it's going to take a lot more than that. So 1 vote from like a convicted felon somewhere is not going to make a big deal. Now, who knows how many convicted felons are even going to vote? I don't know. But the general idea of letting convicted felons vote is definitely going to be controversial. As a friend of mine just recently said, it's similar to the issue of the death penalty. Do you want to kill killers? Do you want to put to death people that have killed other people? A lot of people are like, why? Why? Why wouldn't you, right? Because this person killed, son or a daughter, or somebody's son or daughter or wife or whatever they did, or your whole family, or a whole bunch of people. You want to put an end to their life. It's understandable, but at the same time, it's not solving. Like, what is that doing? It's basically an eye for an eye. You're basically doing what that person did, but in like a more formal sense. You're sticking them to a bed. You're putting a cocktail into their veins and then killing them. So it's the same thing that they already did. The only difference is it's a little bit more formal. So I don't know. I don't support that, obviously. But I understand the people that are coming from, the perspective of wanting to put, prisoners to death, and at the same time, I also understand people that want to not kill. Wanting to not let people that have killed other humans and have violated the law and stuff like that to be able to vote. Now, it's different with like nonviolent drug offenders and nonviolent people that have committed nonviolent crimes. That's a different story. Those people, what impact has somebody, a black dude that is caught selling crack or weed or cocaine or whatever on the street, and then getting caught for it and then going to jail? Why should that guy not be allowed to vote? He should be allowed to vote. And it's not like he's going to go out there and vote, yeah, I'm in favor of more drugs to be on the street. No. Who knows? Maybe he will. But that you can at least give that person a chance to make some sort of determination, and maybe you're also you're allowing that person to make a determination that will possibly turn his life around, so that maybe he doesn't want to sell drugs anymore. He was just selling drugs at the time because he had to survive, and that's what a lot of the case is with the nonviolent drug offenders. So the people that do get caught for smoking weed or selling weed or whatever they're selling or smoking, or whatever they're doing. But yeah, but when it comes to the case of voting, it's a good conversation to have. Unfortunately, it's not going to be very popular in a general election I believe, I'm just saying what my perspective is, even though I'm becoming more and more convinced to be in favor of letting criminals and people that are in jail to vote. It's going to be very, very hard to convince independent voters and especially right wingers that, oh yeah, it's let's go and let some guy in jail to vote. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I just don't see it happening now. Whether that's going to swing the election for Bernie, I don't know. Assuming he gets into the general against Trump, but Trump is going to. All I know is Trump is going to exploit that. So he better have some good talking points to use against him. To respond to Trump's bullshit, because Trump is going to exploit the shit out of that. He's going to strawman Bernie. He's going to talk about how he wants how Bernie wants illegal immigrants to vote and stuff. He's going to make some shit up. I was looking at the Fox News. I think it was the Fox News or some right wing website. I think it was Hannity. No, Sean Hannity's page, where, oh my God, Bernie Sanders wants he wants felons to vote, and then you look at all the tweets responding to Sean Hannity's tweet, and they're like, yeah, look how desperate these Democrats are. They want to let criminals to vote now. So they're already convinced that like anybody that wants to do that is already a bad person. And then because Bernie also said that he wants that he would be okay with Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, I believe his name was Tsarnaev, one of the Tsarnaev brothers that committed the Boston bombing. He would allow him to vote. And again, I understand how that's a controversial issue. It's not a black and white issue. It's something that you have to really examine it and figure out, have to get to the meat of the issue and talk it out. And Bernie is not going to be able to talk it out with Trump. So luckily he's in a primary. I'm interested to see what all the other people have to say. I know for a fact Buttigieg said no, and he's like a military guy and stuff. So he's kind of like this. He's like this pseudo Democrat or pseudo liberal. He's not even really a liberal. He's obviously not progressive. He said he used to like Bernie, but yeah. So I mean, he seems like he would try and cater to like conservative voters, especially since he's in Indiana, which is a pretty conservative state. But and the last headline here says the NRA just praised Bernie Sanders and did him no favors in doing so. So that's just some bullshit that people have been pushing about Bernie Sanders being pro NRA and pushing certain gun laws that he believes. My response to that, to Bernie Sanders being this so-called like puppet for the NRA, is that he lived or was running. He was the senator from a state that is largely in favor of guns, largely in favor of pro-guns. They don't have a lot of murders in the state of Vermont, where he's been the senator for the last 12 years, and then he's also been, he was in Congress starting in 91, so almost 30 years now. But and then he was also obviously mayor of Burlington. But he's been in that state for more than 30 years, yeah. And he, the gun crimes in that state are very, very low. And it's understandable that he would be in favor of, saying like, oh yeah, the people in my state should be allowed to vote. Now they say he voted in favor of he voted against the Brady bill and stuff. I think that had to do with, I don't know what the grounds was behind why he voted against the Brady. I believe it was because of, I want to say, like wait lines for like waiting for guns to purchase guns. So like the waiting period. And they say like he was in favor of like allowing guns on trains. So like all the anti-gun groups, they came out against him in 2016 and are still coming out against him and saying like, oh, he's some sort of puppet of the NRA. And so it's just, whatever, dude. It's not, I'm not convinced Bernie is that. I believe that his views on guns, I think they're relatively normal, in my opinion. I mean, he believes in background checks. He believes he's voted on banning assault rifles 3 times. I mean, it's not like he's not pro-gun like that. He's not pro-gun like Republicans are, but they pretend like he is because they're trying to stick something on. And like Daniel said before, they're reaching really hard. They're reaching really hard to try and pin something on him, and they're going to be very, very unsuccessful in convincing the people that he's pro NRA. I mean, come on, it's fucking stupid. Anyway, let's see what some of the comments are here. A little more from Daniel here. He says, I feel that in Bernie's mind is that he talks the way he talks because he knows that fixing the system overall means benefiting minorities and the disadvantaged. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think Bernie's record has definitely, he's definitely been in favor of minorities, people of color, to live much better. And a lot of times you have these conversations and you talk about how Bernie, like we said before, Bernie, is going into whiter states and he's trying to appeal to whiter people. But again, he is not only doing that, he's going to the other states, but at the same time, he is talking about how, so he's talking about, for example, he talks about how, okay, I'm in favor of Medicare for all. I'm in favor of healthcare for all. I think they're calling healthcare for all now. So whatever, I like to call it Medicare for all. He's in favor of Medicare for all. He's in favor of free tuition, tuition-free college. He's in favor of, raising the minimum wage, making it a living wage. A living wage would be at least, I don't know, $20-something now. So, but even getting to $15 an hour, which he did advocated for in favor of Amazon, and everybody loved him for that. That was a huge accomplishment by Bernie when he got Amazon to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour. But yeah, he's in favor of all these things, and these are all things that are going to help people of color. So people that are living in all these different states where they're being, so if you just throw out a random state, throw out a state like Alabama, throw out a state like South Carolina, Mississippi, all these states that are heavily populated with black, with a black population. These policies are going to help them because that's what they're suffering. They're suffering right now. People in those states are suffering with class. It's institutional class racism, essentially, in the sense that because somebody is a person of color, is black, whatever ethnicity you are, that's not white, essentially, these people are suffering through problems that are keeping them from being able to advance in society. So if you're a black person living in the state of South Carolina, and you want to go and get a job at, let's just throw out a company, let's say McDonald's, and they don't want to hire you for whatever reason, and let's just say they do hire you, but they end up giving you, I don't know, $9.50 an hour. Well, I don't know what the minimum wage is in that state, but let's just say they get you for $9.50 an hour. That is nowhere close to even being enough for that person. That person has to get a second job. So they're going to go out there and they're going to keep hiring these people for lower minimum wage jobs, and people are going to have to work these terrible jobs, which is going to do nothing for them, and then they're going to have to suffer. And then, but then, these fucking right-wing politicians and the many Democrats say, like, well, why don't you just get another job? What's the big deal? Why don't you work harder? There's nothing wrong with the system. It's perfectly fine the way it is. You just need to make it work better for you. It's something. So they're blaming them. They're trying to put it on them and try to act like it's something they did. When in reality, these issues are all institutional, and it's all because the system is made to screw over people of color, screw over people that are more, they're disadvantaged. They're not able to make it like white people are. People like myself, people like, to be fair, I do have Persian background. I mean, my parents were born in Iran, but I'm just saying generally, in regard to the fact that people like myself, people that are white, people that there a lot more people have opportunities that black people, Mexican people, maybe even a lot of Asian people don't have. These are all issues that they will have, that they have to go through, and they don't get opportunities because of their skin color. And Bernie Sanders is trying to appeal to that message by talking about class, by talking about race, and interconnecting those, and saying that these problems can all be, not all, but a good chunk of them can be fixed by the policies that he's advocating for. So if a person is poor and going out there and wanting to get a better type of healthcare, let's say if a woman, I think it's different. Well, a woman is a little bit different because they can go to Planned Parenthood and stuff, and like if they want to get like a pap smear or something. But let's just say like a man, is poor. He doesn't have anything, he doesn't have any kind of health insurance. He can, he can go into an ER, but if he does that, then that ends up being funded, well, at least under Obamacare, it ends up being funded by the rest of us. So it ends up costing more people more, because going to ER is expensive as hell. And now, unless you have unless you have Medi-Cal or something, like I do in the state of California, I currently have Medi-Cal because I'm not able to make enough money to have decent insurance. So I get Medi-Cal, and it's pretty decent. But I'm lucky. I'm in California. Now, I don't know how it is in any other states, but yeah. So my general point is that the policy that Bernie Sanders is pushing for, even though they're not specifically catering to like, oh yeah, I'm going to help that black person or that Hispanic person, these things are going to end up helping them in the long run. But since he's not framing it in like this way that makes them feel like they are being that they're being heard, they get pissed off and they think he's being racist and not paying attention to them. So it's just like a lot of that is just bullshit. It's just they're just making that stuff up, and that's honestly a lot of it is being pushed by the media too. And so they kind of just fall for that shit. People just fall for the propaganda. Yeah. So, I mean, what are you going to do? That's just the way it is.